I'm interested in the illusion of reality. Those are the words of Robert Altman, Hollywood's maverick on the inside. They say Altman breaks rules. He destabilizes norms. He's socially conscious. He's saying something, at least something more than the platter that is ordinarily offered up. Getting started late, age 44, didn't impede this bear of a man from his work. 40 features, thereabouts. From the smeared, dropsical and darkly funny MASH to, well, Popeye and Gosford Park, and the persona-like art drama of three women. The complex legacy that does complex things. So it's really helpful that we have a special guest with us today, Blu Hunt, an Altman absolutist. Together we're going to look at the lyrically lovely yet dark noir of The Long Goodbye, but also The Player, 1992, film set in Hollywood, about America, the usual stuff, done very differently, and some other bits in between. Welcome, Blu. Hello, Ralph, as ever. But Blu, you're like a long-term. You suggested this. You brought up Altman. You were just talking a moment ago very eloquently about Altman. Can you basically say all that good shit again? Why you like Altman? What kind of got you into Altman? Why he's a lodestar for you?
Yeah, he believes, I think, and you see it in his movies, that you have to accept that, like in life, you're on both sides of the coin as like a human. Like, you're the bad guy and the good guy, and you're at the center of everything. And he kind of, like, I was listening to him talk, and he was saying that like you can only pull off satire, and he can only make a satire with the understanding that he's at the butt of the joke, that he's in the center of it. Otherwise, what you're making is just propaganda. Like, if you're not challenging yourself as a person, as a director, and then, like, thus challenging the audience to, like, accept, their flaws, then you're just, like, selling ideas instead of, making an impression, which I think is, again, like, that's something I love about his movies, is they are like impressions. They don't even feel like movies. They feel like a wave of, like, feeling and tone, and then somehow he manages to say something tangible, like, also.
Yeah, something sticks to the wall almost of this. Yeah, because it's when the first Altman I saw was only like last week or whatever, was The Long Goodbye. A film that is hazy and muddy, and texturally it's quite muddy, and the sound, and we'll talk a lot about his sound later, I'm sure. His people overlapping voices, conversations that you can't quite hear. It's a feeling and an effect, which is really powerful, and it's things seem non-incidental that are happening. Him feeding his cat at the beginning is this huge drama almost, but not at the same time. What about you, Ralph? You've done Altman before, right? Or are you new? I can't remember.
Yeah, so I watched MASH and Gosford Park when I was much younger, and then a few months ago I did Three Women, and then this past few week I just ran through them, like McCabe, Mrs. Miller, Nashville, California Split, Long Goodbye. We did together. I guess and then I just watched this documentary called Altman, made in 2014, which is a slightly gimmicky but very useful, informative retrospective on his career. I guess what's really interesting to me is thinking a lot about, like, his relationship to actors, because it's spoken about very clearly that he is like an actor's director. You can tell from the way that certain actors reoccur in his work, and people like Shelley Duvall and Elliot Gould, whose performances just grow and develop and evolve through his works in this beautiful, sensitive way, but also the way that bit players like Jeff Goldblum and Richard E. Grant kind of pop up and kind of steal the show for the few moments that they're on screen. So I guess, it's funny, he's an actor's director, he's also an everything director. His kind of use of landscape, mise-en-scène is kind of extraordinary, his sense of place. It's all very human, I guess. But I guess thinking about an actor's director, we know directors who aren't actors directors. We know, people like Bresson who kind of refuse the idea of any kind of acting practice in cinema. But what does it mean for you, Blu, as an actor? When you hear about Altman, when you hear him articulate his craft, does it ring bells for you?
Yeah, I mean, I like that he's an actor's director in the sense of kind of respecting the craft of acting and really believing that it's a talent. Maybe not necessarily like that. He believes that like everyone in the making of a movie has a job, that like his job as a director is to translate something, to convince people of something, and to translate what the actors are doing, to translate what the cinematographer is doing, and he somehow has the gift to be able to do that. And he gives the actor a lot of freedom. Like, there's a lot of improvising. It's interesting that actually, because he doesn't, his movies aren't like he doesn't really care about the script very much, or like the dialogue. Like he doesn't really stick to it. I don't even think he's written a lot of his own movies.
Even though he started off as a writer.
He did.
Yeah, it's funny, in that document, again, this is all fresh knowledge, but he came to filmmaking, he didn't go to film school, right? He learned to film in an industrial film studio that made kind of infomercials and, government films and things like that. I think he literally said his cousin told him that, you would make a good writer because your letters are good. Literally, your letters from the war or whatever are good. So he wrote a script. The script was accepted. That became his first writing credit. He was then, sort of fell into directing through a kind of very technical, and I suppose what would have been a very collaborative process, because he was having to learn on the job almost, because he knew nothing formally about directing. And I think that's kind of his strength, because he hasn't got an ivory tower academic approach to, directing. His films, I hate to use this word because it can kind of be misleading, but collaborative. And you do see it again, yeah.
He went in I'm just looking at his Wikipedia. They've done that weird thing with a table where they've sort of put the columns writer and producer.
Oh, the red and
yes,
green.
No,
Yes, no.
yes.
Yeah.
And he went through long phases of not writing and then writing again and then not writing. Similar with producing. I think it depended a huge amount on the production company.
Yeah.
Like when he was working with Fox, he was writing and producing everything, and then went with MGM not so much.
It's funny how how successful he became for a guy that in a way fucked up so much, not necessarily intentionally, but was, when he was an outsider looking in from Hollywood and became an insider, working for Fox and MGM, he was fired quite a lot. He was again, from the documentary, he was fired from one kind of relatively schlocky production, sci-fi production, because the producer, looked at the rushes and was looking at the footage and was like, he's fucked the dialogue up because the actors are all talking over each other at once. Fire this man immediately.
Which became his signature style.
Right? So he's in a way.
Isn't that the most Hollywood thing, though, to be an outsider and an insider all at once? Like almost all Hollywood films are about outsiders, and like every film that wins an Oscar is about an outsider, and it's always this idea that it's the outsider that wins.
Which is what I think is so interesting about The Player, because he's not an outsider at all. He's quite literally an insider. You're constantly aware, very much so in The Player, which it's literally like, this is a movie, this is a movie, this is a movie. Mm-hmm. It's like a movie becoming a movie becoming a movie. But even in his others, there's like this weird meta sense that you get. And I don't know if that's the colors or kind of like like you were saying, the muddiness, like the flatness of it. There's always this like sense of distance. Where like you feel like the outsider as the audience, and everyone in the movie feels like
well,
like they don't feel outside of something.
No, and it's weird, in The Player, his shot choice, you've got a camera sitting outside of a building and it's shooting through the window, and we're observing a meeting. There's a plant in the way. There's a shoulder. We can kind of hear the dialogue of the conversation. It's not the conventional setup where we would be,
it's an 8-minute shot.
Yeah,
and someone refers to the whole thing.
Tracking shot.
Someone refers to the opening scene of Touch of Evil, which is like 4 minutes.
Yeah, that's the all-time.
And then Altman, while referencing that shot, then does better than Wells.
The Wells shot is so cinematic, though. That Wells shot in Touch of Evil is so cinematic, and this is and isn't at the same time.
Yeah, it's like it isn't cinematic in that he's like making fun of being cinematic while actually being incredibly cinematic, which is it's the attitude that I love. And it's like the attitude of like American filmmaking, or like subversive American filmmaking, that's so good, which is like this kind of, we're stuck in like a kind of a studio system. We have these like really strict like structures, and then he just goes in there and he's not like making fun of it to the point where he keeps himself at the center of knowing he's a part of the joke. Like there's this thing about Altman where he's like, yeah, like these are all things to be critical of, and it's all this weird game that we all play, and I hate it, and it's gross and it's silly, and there must be a better way to do it, but I still like would love to win an Oscar, and like I want to be a part of Hollywood. And,
he's still made films, you know.
Exactly. And there's like a lot of interviews of him where like people are like, well, how can you make this movie and about hating the idea of making movies? And he's actually, I saw this interesting thing, which again is why I think The Player translates really well still today, and it gives you this kind of eerie feeling where he talks about like how he uses Hollywood as a way to just talk, it's not actually about Hollywood at all. He just uses Hollywood, which is something everyone knows so well, to talk about like the culture in general of like a society that really looks up to, like, our heroes are or especially at the time, our heroes are businessmen. Our heroes are like people that are very greedy, and you know, he really foreshadowed something there.
But he does the same with Nashville and the country scene, right? In Nashville, he uses this kind of microcosm, this one weekend where all these events are coming together, a political rally and a festival of music.
Again, something like Long Goodbye, you know, we know precious little about the characters, their motivations, the backstory, all the things that, you know, normally propel a plot forward become unimportant. Elliot Gould's PI character, it's unimportant who he is. The convention in a noir film is that the PI is a disgraced cop, or cop who gave up being a policeman because, this is the cliche, gave up being a policeman because the force was too corrupt, and he's a good guy and he's got a heart of gold. It implies those things, but it never tells us that. It kind of shows it. Instead, it as it were, wastes its time on showing him feeding his cat. Elliot Gould's character is kind of indifferent in a way. He's kind of not even the kind of dry, you know, hard drinking PI that we know from cliche again. He's kind of a bit indifferent to this world. You know, he kind of bounces around between it, even though he's the protagonist. The characters,
that's an amazing kind of creative lesson, right? If you want to see a character's true self, like, you know, show them feeding their cat, like, you know, you don't need them to sit on the couch and talk about their part. You could just have them feed a cat.
Well, it's crazy because when I think of The Long Goodbye, like, that's still what I remember. I remember him in the grocery store looking for cat food. Or I just remember, like, the woman... I mean, that's, too, it's like when you put, like, striking animals into a movie, it's like they say, like, you could be watching like one of the like a great play on stage, and if a cat walks on stage, that's not supposed to be like every, you know.
Animals are the best actors because they don't get living work.
Completely naturalistic,
like the dog. I love the dog in A Long Goodbye. Like the woman and the dog, the image of her with that big, it's like a big black Great Dane or something, or no, a Doberman. I think it's
what
a Doberman.
Better embodiment of the black dog of depression that haunts that house than a literal fucking black dog? Because sometimes he can be quite on the nose.
Speaking of on the nose, like I want to do a bit, just in case listeners haven't seen it, like I want to do a bit of a deep dive on the plot of The Player, because I think it's a really amazing, intricate thing. Like, it's a film about a movie exec who receives these poison pen postcards threatening his life from an anonymous screenwriter who he has kind of passed over, snubbed. And he arranges to meet the person who he thinks is the screenwriter at a screening of The Bicycle Thieves, classic neo-realist. He's kind of trying to identify with this outsider figure who's into, you know, different films from Europe. And he ends up getting into an argument with him outside, which ends very violently with him killing this man. And then he realizes, you know, what he's done and kind of tries to hide the evidence and rushes off. And then this story of the killing, of the mysterious death of this scorned screenwriter becomes this legend that sort of rushes through the industry while he's kind of sitting at desks, fielding various power struggles in the boardroom. And his conscience is kind of burning. I mean, there's some bits that are almost cartoonish, how like dogged he is by his kind of guilt and grief. But then, of course, it turns out that he kind of got the wrong guy, and these postcards keep appearing. And there's this price on his head that keeps expanding. There's an amazing scene in a police station where with Whoopi Goldberg as one of the detectives, where various different things. There's a fly being swatted by one of the colleagues. There's just a conversation about some tampons being taken. Various sort of distractions while he's it's one of those classic things. You don't know whether you're being asked for evidence or questioned or accused, and gradually the kind of circle closes in on him. But meanwhile he's fielding all these kind of movie ideas from various people, including Richard E. Grant's character, who proposes an idea about someone on death row, which then ends up being made with Bruce Willis.
It's an awful performance by Richard E. Grant, but brilliant at the same time.
As English people, we have to be ashamed of Richard E. Grant. It's just our sort of
love him.
obligation. But yeah. Anyway, so to cut a long story short, this I guess the best encapsulation of it is the final. Oh, and he also falls in love with the widow of the guy he killed.
Of course he does. Yeah.
Just a side note. That's pretty crucial. Also, yeah. So the basic ending is this kind of this blackmail threat that's made in the form of a movie pitch, where this man says, "Yes, I've got an idea. It's a movie exec who's killed someone and no one knows." But there could be a happy ending, and this idea of the happy ending constantly being forced on things, Richard E. Grant idea, he sort of it's not going to have a happy ending, it's not going to have any stars, and he sort of gladly takes the happy ending and the stars when he realizes it's financially advantageous.
Because it's funny again, because these are in a way quite stereotyped performances, caricatures. The cold widow, the kind of manipulative movie exec, the social climbing exiled Englishman filmmaker. There's all these kind of characters who fill these certain roles, and they do it with aplomb. Like, they really do. It meets all the criteria of the formal film that this is trying to be, but transcends all them because it's got just a deep weirdness about it. Everything is uneasy. And I hate to again, I don't think he's that similar to Lynch. I don't. But there's a kind of similarity to something like Mulholland Drive. Mulholland Drive is a much more obviously uneasy film. This film is a lot lighter, but there's a similar kind of bubbling uneasiness that kind of runs throughout all of it.
Yeah, Mulholland Drive is really like if you took the player, and if you watched the player a lot and went to bed at night and had some crazy ass dream where you were in the player, but everything was weird, and
it's kind of the player plus three women.
Yeah, it actually really is. Which Three Women, I actually just watched that last year, and I was really blown away. I was just it was never what I expected it to be. I couldn't believe that he had made something so ethereal and so dreamlike, and also just
so Bergman.
Yeah. What did he say? He said, there's a quote of his, I just read it on Wikipedia or something, that they're empty vessels in empty places. That's what the movie is about. And I was like, wow.
It's so interesting that he can jump from these things, because I recommend everyone listening to this, and you too, if you want to fuck your mind up and you're in a rut, or you're just having a weird day, or you're flat and you're not really feeling anything, I want you to watch the trailer of Popeye on YouTube. And it's an awful transfer. It blew my mind it's just so fucking bizarre. It's so deeply weird. Robin Williams playing almost like a two-dimensional cardboard cutout translation of the film. Imagine it would be fucking Zack Snyder that would make Popeye now, but it would be dark. But this is, this is just such a bizarre fantasy. And you go from that to something like Three Women. I started watching earlier. It's great. Again, this kind of ethereal dream nature. You've got these traditional, you've got MASH, a kind of dark and black comedy, anti-war comedy. You've got, he works on so many registers, and they're kind of all identifiably Altman, but actually kind of it's to his service that they're also not. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I've actually, I couldn't connect the dots between these films in a way, and that's actually a good thing.
Yeah, it's strange because it almost feels like all of his characters like exist, just very much like Lynch and like a lot of great directors. Like it feels like his characters live all in one universe together, but in different like just in different versions or worlds within that universe or something. Like it does kind of all merge together. Like I could see, Tim Robbins like going to gamble and running into the guys from California Split, and that wouldn't feel weird. And then I could see, Shelley Duvall from Three Women like hitting on them trying to get laid, Like
I
would love to see this mashup.
But a lot of his films were mashups, right? Like I haven't seen Shortcuts, but Nashville definitely has these parallel storylines running. I mean, it's part of the sound design that we gestured to earlier. His sound design style is cacophonous. I mean, he apparently innovated this recording style. Instead of having one boom dangling between everyone's head, he sort of had this 8-track recorder where he was picking up sound from various different spots in the room and mixing it. And it does capture this very like unfocused thing, and he plays with that. I mean, there's an amazing bit in California Split where these people where there's loads and loads of voices all at once, and then suddenly they all kind of rise up into one. They're singing in unison or chanting in unison, and it's just it's beautiful the way he plays with that polyphony.
I'm trying to figure out because there's this muddiness. There's a indecision. There's a kind of loss of focus is what I would call it, actually, because we're used to a cinema that's very focused and very sharp and very clear and declares itself to us. Yeah, but here, you've got something where often the camera's in the middle distance, or you've got a long shot. We've got very slow, careful zooms that don't really reveal everything. They're very careful, very patient zooms. Then sometimes there might just be a sudden kind of handheld shot that tracks up to a certain part of the screen and zooms in an unsteady kind of way. It's like looking. It is like looking. It's one of the few directors who really capture the kind of the chaos of sensory overload without making a visually crazy, wacky film, because they're quite normal environments. It's like looking around a room quickly and trying to get your bearings and deciding where to look. And the camera's on the journey with you when you're staring around.
And he always knows exactly where to cut into, he somehow just knows where, when you're looking around the room trying to figure out where to look, where you would look. And
the thing you would focus on.
Every time it cuts, you're just like, that's what I didn't know I wanted to see that next, but that's what I wanted. He knows when to give you relief, especially in California Split, he knows exactly when to play a song, when to quiet everything and to put the soundtrack on and relax you for a moment. And it's I feel like so many filmmakers now make movies about things or make movies to do something to the audience or to be something. And it's earlier filmmakers who, especially in American cinema, were really exploring making a movie be the thing, exactly, without 100%. Trying to torture an audience, or something like that. Even he kind of talked about he's very, very, he loves jazz. And he's very inspired by jazz, obviously. And he talked about how for a long time he wanted to make a movie about jazz because he loves jazz so much. And then you realize, why don't I just make my movies be jazz? What? He's there's
the free
no
association,
you can't explore something by making something about it. You can only explore something by making the thing what it is.
Absolutely,
It's what's his freaking name? The Damien Chappelle director guy making the movie about the guy who was La La Land or the Whiplash, stuff like that. It's you have this director who loves jazz, and so he makes movies about jazz, and then it doesn't relay anything.
we're strongly against aboutness on this podcast.
We really are.
I am.
You have to live your truth with the film.
Yeah, and even like with the player, like he's a bad guy, but we really like him, and I think
he's a perfect product.
Modern audiences, especially in America, are really afraid to relate to the bad character. Like anti-heroes are becoming like anti-heroes who are ultimately good, and people don't watch bad people centered as central characters in movies anymore. And I think that's made us lose our humanity, because I think that's so important.
True. Again, you know that thing where he says, that's why I mentioned it at the very top of the episode, you know, the illusion of reality. Formerly, these films are arranged like real life, real looking, real observation, real point of view. It's still an illusion because it is a film, like you said. But it's aware that it's a film. Its filminess is very at the center of what we're seeing. So it's that careful interplay between something that's really staged and curated and something that's chaos. You know, which is what real life is. I mean, I'm talking from a very limited perspective because, again, I've only seen 2 3/4 of, you know, his films. You know,
I haven't seen like Shortcuts. I haven't seen Macabre Mrs. Miller. There's a lot I haven't seen of his that I need to.
I mean, there's so many films by him.
40 fucking films.
I mean, I grew up on Popeye, but I never would have known that was like a Robert Altman movie, you know. And now that I know it just makes it better. I love it. I think it's so good. And watching interviews of his, it's interesting. Like every interview after Popeye was made, everyone talks about it, how bad it was and how bad it was for his career. And he's like, no movie's ever made more money for me than Popeye. And yet people...
The Popeye dollars are coming in.
It made so much money, apparently, at the time.
It's so bizarre because, it's something, again, like I was saying earlier, it's something so almost unsettling about Popeye. It's
so creepy.
Yeah.
I remember watching it when I was a little kid, like, and being like, what? Like, this is weird. This is not for kids.
It's not like... It's not Robin Williams like the genie, you know, all kind of softness and kindness. He's like almost this, you know, robotic Turk. He's like this kind of strange machine-like figure who's two-dimensional and really has no facial expressions. It apes the tricks from comic books, you know, kind of the arm winding up to punch and these kind of almost schlocky, bad quality special effects. And it's incredible that, you know, it's still, from what I saw, pretty well made. It's just really fucking weird.
Which is so cool. I mean, and Harry Nilsson did the soundtrack, I think.
Oh,
like
really?
the song that Shelley Duvall sings, I think was Harry Nilsson, which I think is so cool too. Like it's very American weird, you know, like almost psychedelic, but like not. It's strange.
Yeah, actually, it's like a kind of cleaned up Zabriskie Point, or like Zabriskie Point, but seen from an actual kind of insider. Even though, you know, Altman was kind of an outsider, he still, like we said, understood the Hollywood system, was part of it.
I mean, that's what's kind of what I feel like is really coming out of this is like the you know, it's like the master's tools will dismantle them, or maybe the dismantling isn't that necessary, but like the tools, like using, I think this is especially with film, like we talk about this on this podcast quite a lot, like, you know, like the male gaze and film and all that. Film is such a, like, because it requires so much industry, it's like necessarily quite a conservative medium in a lot of ways, with a small c, and yet, like, it can be sometimes the most subversive thing to use all of those tools and all those conventions, and then, you know, put a spanner in the works as directors like Altman do. And I guess that's sort of a factor. I mean, in the player literally in this kind of quite Almodovar way of using metaphor to express metaphor, you know, the camera, the gun, the penis, you know. Like it uses the structures of film and the industry of film to talk about film, and therefore to talk about life, actually.
Exactly. I mean, movies are, and it's why I think it's the ultimate art form. ever, is because it is like, it's sometimes I think constantly like, what came first, like movies or life? Like, in everything we do is becoming more and more and more a reflection of movies. I think we've become lost in the images that we see in movies.
It's true. It's how we learn to fall in love.
Exactly. Like love was created by movies, and 100%. even like arguments. Like I'll realize the way I'm arguing I'm like, why am I being like cinematic about this? Like, is this even how I feel right now?
You're waiting for the crescendo. You're waiting for the.
I mean, I'm an actress, but
that's true.
Yeah. It's
practice.
Weird because I think we've turned our lives into plot lines like a bit, and I think the player,
But I think the things he does that kind of alienate and distance us, like again the muddy voices, the lack of clarity, in like a Brechtian sense, that might be an art form that is trying to alienate and reject us from its workings and its mechanics. Here it's actually pulling you in. He's generous. Blu said he still gives us these moments of relief. He gives us comic relief. He's sympathetic to the audience because he wants to change the formula of what works in a, say, Hollywood film and play around with it, but he still feels there's value in it. Like you said, he still knows that movies make our lives. We identify with characters in them. He just doesn't want to do it in a lazy way.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to explore, and I'm not quite sure where this will lead, but I'm really struck by friendship in Altman's films. I feel like, it's really obvious in California Split, which is a film about a friendship that emerges at the start of the film.
Friendship.
And kind of ends at the end. Three Women is about the most fiery friendship you could imagine. MASH is all about friendship bonding in a very high intensity situation. Yeah. But even The Long Goodbye,
is about friendship.
Exactly, like the sort of relationship between Gould's character and
and his friend who kills himself or his murders.
Or who he kills.
By the end. Spoiler alert.
The sensitivity to all those relationships in Altman's films, I find really extraordinary and moving, and actually quite rare. Even like for any director, art house or Hollywood, like it just seems to be. There's a real. Even like in California Split, where the characters don't have a backstory, the focus on bonds. The shot that really just sticks out to me is, they've both been beaten up, Gould and the guy he meets, I can't remember his name, in California Split, and they're just applying like cream to each other's chest. They're both topless and they're both applying cream to each other's chest.
Clip, I think.
And it's, we can rabbit on about things being homoerotic, but it's very intimate,
Well, it is. Even Three Women is very homoerotic, I think. They're like, I understand that they're all kind of like extensions of each other in Three Women. The women, it's very like psychological and like Freudian and stuff, but there is something that's very sexual, I think, about the way that the three women interact with each other, and I think in California Split,
what I've seen, this my understanding is the sex isn't sexy in him. It's kind of everything else that is.
Interestingly enough, and the player, even he feels. When I watched The Player for the first time, I immediately, which is the first time I've ever done it, I immediately watched the commentary after I finished it.
Oh, great idea. I love people who watch the commentary.
Now I'm pretty into them and I listen to them more, but he's just so nice to listen to. He's Altman. A nice person to hear speak about movies.
He's got a kind of friendly, accessible, kind of like avuncular kind of thing. He's like a kind of father, almost. I'm projecting massively here, but a kind of father figure.
What does he say?
But he says that that the girlfriend or the wife or whatever to the dead writer is like, she's not real at all. Like, she's basically just a fictitious, like almost like a manic pixie dream girl before that was even a thing. Like Altman was like, she just completely morphs into whatever Tim Robbins' character needs, like, or wants. Like, she is just there to
Improbably.
for him. She is a plot device. Like, she doesn't really exist. And even when they have sex, like, it's not sexy. Like, he films it in these weird close-ups with like weird cuts that's like over the top, and it almost reminds me of like The Room, like a bit, you know, where it's just like it's just unsexy, but his character feels asexual. Like, his character doesn't feel
even with like Gould's character in Long Goodbye, you know, he, in a way, there is the suggestion of a sexual relationship with the wife of the writer. There's a closeness, but again, he doesn't seem particularly interested in that. He seems more like a confidant.
And the women across the way.
I was going to say, like the hippies across like the way.
God, yeah. They're like radiating sex, and he's just like, no thanks.
Like, hey.
Can you get us some brownie mix? Okay, girls, which kind? It's just there's something very kind of like disillusioned with it in a way. There's like a disillusionment there, which is like
so
the sex drive.
Friend-zoned director.
Friend-zoned director. But he was a real party animal. Like, you know, Altman had a lot of friends, loved to host. He was a real kind of like, he wasn't just like this lone wolf sniping from the sidelines. You know, he knew everyone. He was kind of in the mix. You know, he was, when you watch interviews with him, he's like confident. You know, he's, like I said, he's friendly and he's got this kind of avuncular manner, but you know, he's kind of confident, and he's a bit of a gadfly in a way, which is why he's so likable. That's why I like him.
Yeah, he's like the kind of guy who makes movies about whatever he feels like making them about. And I don't think he cares about about the movie being good, like being successful. He's just kind of like, I need to make this. I got to translate something. I have these incredible actors here. I'm going to let them tell the story, and I'm just here directing it. Like, that's what a director does. Like, sometimes you almost give directors too much credit, or we give, you know, it's like directors are just supposed to direct the players in on the set. And obviously there are some directors who are like, no, like, this is my vision, this is my movie, this is my thing, this is my property. But a movie, like, I mean, all I've ever done is work on sets, and a movie it's a collaboration. Like, you can't have a movie without carpenters, you can't have a movie without makeup artists, you can't, you know, it's like a director needs to direct all those people, and he just does that he just really gives himself.
I think there's a sense of, in my mind, maybe this is a false equivalence, or it's a false opposition, but I was like, you could take someone like Orson Welles, who was kind of an outsider in the kind of lone wolf sense of the word, and Welles worked through smoke and mirrors in his own life, and kind of was a difficult character, and was, you know, felt spurned by Hollywood. That's why he struggled to make films in the later part of his life. Had a similar kind of big man, avuncular attitude, but they're poles apart. You know, where Welles was psychologically wounded by Hollywood. You know, Altman seemed to just kind of, like you said, Blu, maybe because he kind of got people, understood that it was a collaborative venture, and respected people's decisions, managed to become maybe like the greatest Hollywood success story, even, which is funny when we talk about him in language, we couch it in terms that's like, he was an outsider, he destabilized Hollywood's norms, he kind of broke the rules, he rejected Hollywood, and he's actually one of Hollywood's biggest victories.
But they didn't reward him, did they?
No, but he really, I find it really interesting. Like, he was very like a studio picture director. Like, he made movies for Hollywood, like, but I think he was almost too old and ahead of his time. I think he missed the wave of indie filmmaking. And I think he had a lot of indie art film ideals, but was already stuck in like the studio world. And like, which is something I can relate to as an actor. Like, I started working on studio things, network things, before I ever had a chance to like start small in the art world,
So
and you can't really
step back.
You can't make your way backwards. It's really difficult, and I don't, especially at that time where I don't even think that was really a thing. And but I think he was trying to make art films as a studio director. I don't think he was necessarily trying to like push anybody's buttons. I don't think he existed in a film industry yet that allowed, like at that time, they still called them personal films. Like when you wanted to make a movie that wasn't like the kind of movies that they were wanting. If you had an idea, like I want to make a movie about this, they called that a personal film. Like you have to make these movies for us, and then you can have your personal film.
Yeah.
And but in a weird way, those restraints are what made his movies so incredible. Like if he hadn't have had those restraints, if he had existed in a different time or been a little bit younger, who knows, you know? But he was really inspired by like old I think he watched everything, but I do remember in an interview of him saying that like he really liked early Hollywood, like all those movies he watched as a younger man, and he talks a lot about like movies at the time still being just a transition of theater, which I think you see specifically in American films, which maybe, and I think people don't realize that in American like cinema, it's like we had to transition from the theater into movies, and for a long time, movies were just a different version of plays. And
a play with a camera in front of it,
just like really two-dimensional. The acting, it's interesting that his movies are so very theatrical, very set-like. You can definitely tell that he believed his movies at the time were still an extension of the play. Of like
the locations are very memorable. Like the motel in Three Women is just like that. You could do that as a play on the set that looked like that.
And
but
yet
in a sense,
the
he also
was very film. The acting was film.
Very subtle, very film. Yeah, absolutely. And he uses sound and the landscape of the frame in these new and very cinematic ways. The focus on acting, which one associates sometimes with a hangover from theatre. Yeah, I mean he's handled that moving exceptionally well, and still
understands little cathartic quirks of film. You know, there's the ending, again, spoilers, which I love a spoiler. The ending of The Long Goodbye, when Elliot Gould's characters, as it were, you know, bested his enemy. He's killed the man who set this whole train of events in motion. We see that the camera kind of lingers behind him. We see him kind of walking off in the distance. It's a great shot where the co-conspirator drives past him, which is great. She doesn't yet realize, there's a bit of dramatic irony because she doesn't realize yet that he's dead, and Elliot Gould kind of literally does a kind of Gene Kelly style skip in the street. You know, it's great. It's such a perfect cinematic moment, and he gives us both. We can have our cake and eat it with him, 100%.
Yeah, it's interesting that because I wanted to talk about the ending to The Long Goodbye in relation to another, one of my top tenors, controversially so, I feel like, 'cause everyone's like, what? It's like Funny Games by, Michael Haneke. Everyone's like, of all of them, it's going to be that one, And I think it gets almost overlooked because it's the kind of movie you watch when you're younger and you're like, whoa, oh my God, what?
Oh my God, man. Yeah.
But like, actually, they have very similar endings, which is why I love Robert Altman and why I love specifically, and I do like everything by Michael Haneke for the most part. But why I love that one the most is there's just something so the way that Elliot Gould walks up to him, shoots him, and walks away. It's just, and it's done.
Yeah, it's just very bathos almost. It's just the anti-climax.
I guess that's what Funny Games does, right? It uses the conventional form of the genre Hollywood film, but then using it in this brutal way that kind of undermines the spectator's
and
position.
as a spectator, makes you complicit in the horror that is unfolding. Funnily enough, when I first saw Funny Games, I was staying alone in the French countryside. I'd been there for months in the depths of winter, and there was like these French farmers who would kind of invade the land. They would shoot. They shouldn't have been shooting on the land. It's like large grounds of this chateau where I was staying alone, and they would kind of come onto the land because the birds would come on there, and they'd shoot them in the morning. So I was completely. I'd have these nightmares where I was convinced that there'd be a home. I'd basically be killed by these farmers. So I started sleeping with a hammer, like next to the bed, because I was like, "Fuck! I know they're gonna break in and gonna kill me." And then I watched fucking Funny Games. I was like, "Oh, cool! I haven't really seen much Haneke. I'm just gonna like check out Funny Games." And I was just like, "Absolutely not! I'm gonna die in this horrible place."
It's quite. As we're coming up to an hour, but as a sort of final discussion point, I'd like to talk appropriately about Altman's endings, and specifically, I think the player's ending is
so perfect,
so good,
so amazing, it's so neat. Yeah. It's the neatness of this the blackmail becoming this
neat.
Discussion about the ending.
Yeah,
but the other endings have a kind of. I mean, some of his films ends in a shootout, but I guess the most fascinating endings for me are Long Goodbye and California Split, which both have this rather unplaceable melancholy to them. I mean, particularly California Split, which is
oh my god, it broke my heart, kind of.
Yeah, it's a film about these two men who meet through gambling. The people at the casino think that they're working together. They're not, but then they decide to work together. One of them's in huge, horrible debt. The other's the Gould character is quite a happy-go-lucky guy with lots of irons in the fire. But by the end of it, they win a huge amount, and the character, I can't remember his name, who's not played by Gould. He's not quite as memorable as Gould.
But he's so good though. But
he is really amazing, and his problems appear to be solved and the money's come through, but he is just absolutely a shell of a man. He kind of realizes the kind of absurdity of the whole situation, having won all this money.
Oh my God.
Gould kind of sort of joshes him, says, "Oh, do you always take a big win this badly?" And as he counts out the money, he realizes this friendship is kind of done. Like, this friendship served a particular purpose, and it can't really function beyond this kind of this race till the
having
top.
Not seen it, like I said, I love a spoiler. So what's the ending? What happens? They just drift apart.
So the ending is that they part ways, and they take 50% each.
Yeah, and it's done. And I love that he's like, I didn't feel anything special, I think is what he says. He's like, I didn't feel anything special. Like, and he's just when he walks away from all of them, and he's just dumping all of the chips out onto the table, and everyone's watching him, and Elliot Gould takes them and he's counting them out, and he's being silly and goofy, and he's just sitting there just at the bar, and again, when we were talking about the camera knowing where you want to look, every time they cut back to him sitting there staring off into nothing, like at the bar alone, just thinking, it's this rare moment in a movie where I didn't care about verbally what he was thinking at all, like not even at all, a little bit. I just felt so much what he was feeling, and it was almost like I felt like placed in that moment of his. It's just, it was just so dark, and
it comes out of nowhere, really, because a lot of the film is quite odd and distancing, and there's some that it's sort of like bits of it are kind of like, they're just weird, odd bits where like they pretend to be police officers and go into someone's house. There's sort of like weird japes they get up to. It's amazing, very eerie bit where they throw horse races or greyhound race, and they see some, they throw oranges. They see someone they don't like, they throw oranges at them. It's very, very it's absurd, but also like, the kind of zeal of the gambler who knows that, thinks that this time that it'll.
I think that's what it catches. It really captures the come down, and you see two different people, like one person who refuses to come down, and it's almost pathetic and desperate, and it's not funny anymore because, and I think. I feel like I've been both of those people, and almost in the way that Three Women is, there's an acceptance that they're all kind of maybe not necessarily real succinct characters, but more so like persona-esque versions of each other. I almost just now talking about it, I feel like California Split is a little like that too, where there are
It's the
two different
persona for blokes.
Yeah. You know, it's like
Oh, and you have to watch it.
I know. Now you've said that, I might watch it tonight. Yeah, it's weird because again the empty, the hollowness. Because again, the player, the hollowness of his life. Obviously, the ending there is different because he gets this storybook resolution, which is this happy marriage in this white picket fence house almost, even though that's a pure fabrication, because increasingly as the film has gone on, the script has kind of absorbed the reality, and the reality has absorbed the script. So in a sense, but he's ultimately like a deeply empty man. There's a really good scene when they're having lunch, and he kind of says, "We're all grown-ups here. We can talk about something other than like Hollywood or films." And there's a pause. And then they just laugh because they know it's impossible. There's nothing outside of this. There's nothing beyond this world. It's going to destroy all of us.
I think that's what's so resonant about it, is that if you really take that movie out of the confines of Hollywood and you relate it to life, there is a feeling of being trapped in our own like echo chambers and kind of, and it's like sitting around at a table with whomever your friends are and being like, let's talk about something else. And
there's nothing there.
It's that phrase, the chattering classes in Altman. They literally are chattering.
And there's this kind of thing, and a happy ending is the bad guys winning. When if you look at the Hollywood system as like the bad guys, of course they want happy endings at the end of their movies, because happy endings are them winning again and again. Like they get away with murder. He literally gets away with murder.
100%.
And that's, and I know we're not, like getting into like discourse, but I think that's what Altman really believed in, was that it's like we constantly let the bad guys win, we let them go. When that shot of Whoopi Goldberg and the detectives looking down at him from the police station, just knowing the truth and watching him go and just being like, it's almost funny, because it happens so much. And it's interesting to me that audiences today really want happy endings still. They've been convinced they want happy endings to distract them from
their own emptiness and misery.
There are no happy endings, really.
Well, it's sort of like we've replaced happy endings with like righteous endings.
Actually, you're right. Yeah, the rise awful. Of the righteous. Yeah, you're very right.
It's horrible. It's like we can't watch bad people in movies, and movies are about things now. Like they're not the thing, and movies are so bad now.
I think that's such an important distinction. Yeah, we agree.
I'm glad you said it, Blue.
I think it's an important distinction. You're really right when you say films
movies in England are awful and have been for a long time.
But when you say
where
Blue,
are they good though? Actually,
Serbia, parts of Romania. I don't fucking know.
I mean, that's an interesting conversation to have. I genuinely don't think. I think movies are worse now than they've. I feel like I haven't seen like a fantastic movie from the last 10 years.
We all know that the best movies happen on TikTok, right, guys?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I was trying to write a movie review for A Promising Young Woman, and I was like, this is a TikTok. Like, I'm watching a TikTok. This might as well be a TikTok, right? It's so bad.
I haven't seen it, but it sounds. Yeah. It's like the most about film I've heard of for a while.
All the movies that were nominated this year at the Oscars, which the Oscars have been redundant for a long time, but at least they were kind of silly in their redundancy, which is something Altman also was like. Someone asked him, like, what would you do if you won Best Director for The Player? And you get up on stage, and Altman in the interview was like, well, I guess I'd get up on stage and be like, I thought the movie ended,
That's great.
And he's like, but that's what's so funny. You have to accept that you want what you hate, and that you hate what you want, and that...
Yeah.
And that's what I hate. I hate stark, mean, cold opinions, because life is so... It's so hard anyway that it's so much easier to accept that you believe in everything as much as you don't believe in it.
Well, I think,
and
I think we were talking on the chat the other day about a film that recent film which tried to embrace ambiguity and kind of unresolvedness, which was I'm Thinking of Ending Things.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen that?
I actually really liked it.
It was elements of it. I think we argued about it a lot on the group. I wasn't a massive fan. but there were
I'm really
elements of it that were
curious,
quite
yeah.
artful. I thought the kind of long dialogues in the car were very almost uncinematic and very kind of unimaginable to see a film doing that at the moment. It's quite interesting, but I think that there was no generosity there. Whereas Altman gives us brutal movie, yeah, and it was brutal towards the characters. It was brutal towards what they represented. Whereas with Altman, he gives you the brutality and ambiguity, but like you said, he still gives us a way in and a way out. Actually, he gives us a way out, and you could see maybe the major thing that Altman gives us is like a staircase that you can walk back. If films are so much about stuff now, it doesn't mean everyone can go and make fucking Tarkovsky films, but maybe you can walk the ladder down, something
the
that's
cleverness
intense.
seems to be an issue. I think if you're going to be brutal, you can't, it's unseemly to also be clever.
Yeah, you have to do one or the other.
I think if you're going to be brutal, you have to resign from being clever. You have to go down the South Park route of just being dumb.
I think you have to go, especially like, because I've been thinking, like, I've been working on like writing kind of like a horror kind of thingy,
nice.
like more of like a drama or something, and there is this sense of like how, like, where you have to make a decision at one point where it's like, if you want to be bleak, if you want to make something unsettling, you have to go there. I think Haneke does a good job of that too.
100%.
Where like funny games, like the play, which I think funny games and the player have more in common.
I'm really glad you brought up this association.
I like this as a take. I'm very here for it.
Well, even like Altman kind of talks about how the player tells you exactly what, in just its opening, even the opening minute, it tells you how many layers of the movie there are and exactly what kind of movie you're going to watch. And I think Funny Games does that too. It's this still moment in the car, and then you have like screamo metal, Funny Games. So immediately he sets you up like, this is exactly what you're about to watch. What you're about to watch is never going to be what you think it is. So get ready for that. And I think directors don't do that anymore, and instead they want to like surprise you and twist you around and fuck with you, but it doesn't work because that's not how like your visual recognition works when you're watching things. You're emotional to like all the cognitions going on in you. You need to know that you're going to be messed around with.
Yeah, nobody likes to be treated like a fool.
Exactly.
It's a paradox of didacticness. I mean, we talked about this. I can't remember which episode it was, but we were talking about "I May Destroy You," which is I don't know if you've seen it, Blue, but it's this BBC HBO.
I saw it.
HBO.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What did you think?
I think I mean, the things that are bad about it are so obviously bad about it, and it's nothing.
You say
subversive.
that, but no one ever says anything negative about it.
I think it's like it's a better step in a direction towards trying. I think there's a lot of female directors and filmmakers that are trying to talk about something that still feels very intangible, that people are trying to figure out a way to talk about that kind of issue. And I think she does a better job with it than a lot of like in contemporary right now female filmmakers have, because she does have an unlikable character that isn't like,
it's true, actually, the hero
Fleabag unlikable character. Like, she's kind of narcissistic. Like, there's actually nothing likable about her unlikability.
Yeah, you're right. She's very cold. Which is actually
something I don't like about Fleabag. Like, she's so unlikable that you love her and hate everybody else in her world. Yeah.
This is a playful rogue, which is something desirable, and you project onto it. Whereas I May Destroy You, it's like the film, the like, TV program inches away from her. It's like, oh my god.
But I think I guess the beef with I May Destroy You is that like I felt that every scene in that was like, sort of so carefully morally balanced to kind of twist and turn us in different ways. Yeah. And I was sort of like, by the end of it, I just felt like it was weird because I just found it very didactic. But then I searched, I googled "I May Destroy You" didactic, and all of the reviews were like, massive avoids being didactic, so undidactic, and it was just like,
because it didn't literally tell you what to think, but
because it wasn't
did.
pro-rape or anti-rape. People think it's like not didactic,
But it had that annoying, it had again, it undermined a lot of its message in the final episode, where it's like, maybe this didn't really happen, or it kind of.
Then it doesn't commit to a reality.
It doesn't commit to reality.
I think it was too clean, and it should have been a movie.
Yeah.
I think I think there's like almost this thing where movies, even Parasite, which I'm gonna be honest, I really like Parasite as a movie, like that I can watch it with my family and they're like, whoa, you know. But again, it's like, well, have you guys like never seen a Korean film? Like, I don't, you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, it's not that atypical.
It's structured like a lot of like Korean films, like
Old Boy,
and
for example, it's got a similar vibe.
You kind of have a story with a twist and then a genre subversion. It's like, it's nothing new really, but
No.
I think there's like a way. Who says this? Who's the Roger Deakins, the DP,
the
cinematographer? He talks a lot about how movies are becoming a lot more beautiful and like TV is becoming very beautiful.
Yeah,
but
it's true.
in that they're losing any kind of like quality. Like as they get better quality, they lose quality, and I think
we need to be more Festen.
Yeah, more dogma.
Festen.
Have you seen Festen? Oh, it's amazing. So it was the only good Dogma 95 film.
Oh, it's a Dogma film.
Yeah, it was shot on like videotape, and it's like about this 60th this patriarch of the family. It's his 60th birthday, and someone clinks the glass, and his son delivers his happy birthday, this sort of happy birthday address. And, within the first minute or so, he says, when between the ages of 7 and 12, our father routinely sexually abused us. And that's the kind of how the rest of the film is just this like war.
These family
between these members of the family.
Yeah, it's extraordinary.
Wow.
And very.
It's amazing. It's a masterpiece. It should be on my top 10, really. It's amazing. It's a masterpiece, but it's a dirty, horrible film. It's a film that looks nasty most of the time.
Good.
Looks like dog shit.
And deals with nasty people.
Yeah.
And has leaves you with no resolution.
Funny. Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, happiness is funny, and that's what makes you sick about it.
Well, same as Festen.
Like,
Festen's got an anarchic joy to its kind of. It's like what Östlund was like before he got really or actually maybe Lanthimos or something like that. Lanthimos is a really good example of someone who discovered beauty and started making beautiful films that look great,
and then they got boring
got so
empty,
boring, whereas Alps Dogtooth are
contrived.
kind of ugly films, or at least flat and bland films.
I mean, Dogtooth is really beautiful, but in an interesting way. There's like something like hyper cinematic about movies now that erases like any ability to connect with it, and I think that's where I May Destroy You really fails. Like, it's just too pristine
pretty,
and clean, and the shots are perfect, and it's just like
the London it represented as well. It was trying to make London look like New York or something, or like in Manhattan. It was trying to make it, and it kind of occupied this kind of everything. It was
just Shoreditch on a sunny day.
It was all this kind of beautiful. It was very specific locations in Soho and Shoreditch where it was shot, and it was lots of at night. It was perfect neon lighting, and everyone looked fantastic. Every space was perfect.
But that's TV.
Exactly.
I mean, that's how TV shows. So that's something film should be resisting. But
like if I May Destroy You had been done in kind of a more like Altman-esque style, like, of like,
I would love that.
She did a good job of portraying the narcissism of someone who's experienced trauma, which I don't think anyone wants to talk about.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true. Fair play.
And I really appreciated it for that. Like, she just becomes so self-obsessed. And I think that's interesting. But the rest of the movie or TV show, whatever, is just too,
that's all we can say about it, really. It's just too.
I think we've got to wrap it up there.
Yeah, we could go for
hours.
But
on that note, thank you so much, Blu, for joining us.
Thank you so much.
This has been a really great discussion.
I love to talk about movies.
We love movies on this.
Well, we'll have you on again.
Own movie podcast.
This is what we want to do. Everyone who's on it, it's like Ring.
It's like a virus.
Yeah, everyone's 7 days later. No, but I think some people have probably appeared on others, or like. We want to spread the sickness.
Everyone should have a podcast.
Everyone should have.
We've all got internal monologues.
Yeah.
I've wanted to make a movie podcast for so long. Like, I feel weird. Like I'm like autistic about movies or something.
Podcasts are perfect for you then.
Like, if I could just sit in a room with like people walking in and out of the room and just be like, okay, let's talk about movies. I could just do it forever and ever and ever and ever.
It's a useful way
it's a
to externalize your monologues a little bit. That's why it's good.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
better I do this when I talk, at the wall, or my cat. He doesn't want to hear it.
Real Elliot Gould over there talking to his cat.
Are we talking about Long Goodbye, the
No.
cat that doesn't appear? That's and I'm deadly serious about this, is one of the underlying kind of moments of abjection and emptiness about the film is that his cat has run away and it might not come back. That's all I was thinking towards the end. I was like, the whole film, it front-loaded how important this cat was to him in this kind of indifferent way.
And that amazing bit in the shot where he's asking the store assistant
about the food.
What is
Curry
this food?
brand or
They
whatever.
haven't got the right food.
Yeah.
And he does this whole thing, and then he's like, "But haven't you got a cat?" And he's like, "I don't need a cat. I got a woman."
I love that
That's
part.
excellent.
I love that.
Yeah, he meets him in the prison,
so good.
right? It
just makes the whole thing. It just glosses it with even more loneliness.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just peerless.
So good. Just perfect filmmaking.
Perfect filmmaking. I'm going to go and watch the California Split.
Yeah, you're gonna love
Yeah,
it.
you have to.
Our
I'm really
Zoom
hyped.
is just coming to an end as
All
well.
right.
Perfect timing.
Okay.
So I guess that's it. But thank
thank
you
you,
very much.
Blue.
I'm say
Yeah,
goodbye
of
to the
course.
listeners. Thank you for
Farewell,
listening,
everyone.
listeners.
Bye.
Till next time.
And thank you, Blue.
Thanks.
Thank you, Owen.
Bye,
Cheers.
guys.